welcome to episode 10 of The Smallest Thing. I'm Lisa Manterfield. If ever there was a time in our history that we could all use a hug, it's now. Ironic that just when we need the comfort of other human beings, it's forbidden. So this week I want to talk about the power of human touch. It's something I thought about a lot as I was writing this book, and something I'm getting more perspective on as I'm experiencing our current social isolation. But first, Em is also missing contact with the people she loves. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of The Smallest Thing. Welcome to the serialized audiobook, The Smallest Thing, written by Lisa Manterfield, read for you by Charlie Sanderson.
Chapter 10, Saturday, July the 30th. The pebble ricochets off the stonework so far from Deb's window, it almost hits the neighbour's house. It clatters against the drainpipe and drops into the shrubbery below. I curse under my breath, wishing I'd been endowed with a cricketer's arm or at least some semblance of athletic ability. I search around for another pebble and try again. This time I get lucky and the pebble strikes the centre of one of the small glass panes. I'm so busy watching for Deb's face at the window I don't notice the front door open. "Emmett?" Helena pokes her head out. Her light hair is scraped into a ponytail and her face, what I can see of it, is free of makeup. I'm not sure I've ever seen her like that before, and I'm shocked how pale and featureless her face seems without the shades and lines she draws on each day. "What you doing?" "Is Deb in?" I ask, feeling like an idiot for flinging pebbles instead of knocking at the door like a normal person. "She's not allowed out." "Please, Mrs. Elliot," I say, going for the most formal way of addressing her, a tactic almost guaranteed to win over parents. Helena frowns, and I think she's going to dismiss me, but instead she disappears inside, and moments later my friend replaces her. "There's this thing," Deb says, her voice muffled behind her mask. "It's called a phone. Absolutely miraculous means of communication. Pebble flinging is so last century." I was trying not to alert the parents. I gesture toward the house where Helena is presumably describing my odd behaviour to Deb's dad. "Fail," Deb says. "And with that phone registry, who knows what they're tracking or who's listening? I just need to talk to you." Deb's face gets serious. She gestures for me to follow her to the side garden, where she settles in the tree swing, nodding for me to sit on the bench beneath an arbour of pink roses, a safe distance apart. "Tell?" she says. I adjust my mask and lean forward to share the details of my escape plan. I tell her that if I'm careful, I think I can make a dash for it between patrols at Cooklet Delph. Crossing the boundary isn't the problem, though. It's what to do on the other side. There are 3 main roads into Eyam, and I know they're all closed off because I've seen the barricades. I've wandered by several times, so there's no way I'm getting past those armoured vehicles. According to what I've found from surfing the internet and watching people's posts on social media, it looks like the smaller lanes in the area are also being guarded. There'll be no hopping on my bike and pedalling out of here, or taking Dad's car and bursting through the barricades like they do in the movies. If I'm going to get out of here, I'll need to do it on foot. If I leave tonight, I can go through Cooklet Delph and make my way down the crags. It's a scramble in the daylight and will be treacherous even in the eternal twilight of midsummer. But there are no houses or farms in that area, no neighbours to spot me and raise the alarm. From there, it's less than 2 miles over Eyam Moor and through Stokes Wood to Grindleford Station. If I can get that far, I can hop an early train on Sunday, when there won't be many people around, and be in Manchester or Sheffield in less than half an hour. From there, I should be able to travel freely, blending in with the other travellers. Ideally, I'd go straight to London, pick up my new life as if nothing has changed. But given all my correspondence about the flat and job, I'd be too easy to track down. I have one big niggling doubt. What if I carry this thing, whatever it is, out of the village? What if I get all the way to London only to discover I've brought something infectious with me? I recount my plan, then look Deb straight in the eye. "I know this is a very bad idea, and I know you're going to try to talk me out of it, But I can't just stay here and wait to die. It is a bad idea, one of your worst, which is saying something. But I think you should try. I almost lose my nerve right there. I want to hug Deb, but I can't. And I want to cry on her shoulder and tell her she's the best friend I could ever have hoped for, but I can't do that either. But don't go to London, she adds. Go to your auntie's. It's less populated and they can take precautions until you know you're safe. I want to argue that I can't risk harming my family, but I know Deb is right. I'll do everything I can to avoid contact with other people and, once I'm at Auntie Margie's, Mum will know what to do to keep us all safe. Come with me, I blurt. Deb pushes off and leans back in the swing. The ropes around the tree branch creak as she glides back and forth. Even though I can only see her eyes, I can tell she's considering my proposal, maybe weighing her odds between making a run for it with me and taking her chances here in the village. To me, it's a no-brainer, but Deb's hesitation causes me to second-guess my decision. I can't, she says at last. I start to object, but she stops me. They'd hear my wheezing before we even got to the top of the hill, and 2 miles across the moor. I can barely make it to the end of the village without having to sit down. I wouldn't make it, which means you wouldn't make it either. I'm not going to hold you back. It wouldn't be fair. Well, I'm not going to leave without you. That's what wouldn't be fair. Deb shakes her head. No. I'm not leaving you here to die. The words catch in my throat as the reality of my decision hits me. But Deb just laughs. Salty, do you know how many different pills and potions I already take each day just to stay alive? Whatever this thing turns out to be, I promise you, I'm already taking something to prevent it getting me. So just go. And send me a postcard when you get to your aunt's. Deb reaches out to rest a hand on my back. Just in time, we both pull back, measuring the distance between us and shuffling around until we're far enough apart. I can see the anguish in her eyes at what we have to do, and I feel the same anguish in my gut. What kind of life is this that you can't even hug a friend? The skin across my back starts to ache where her hands should have landed. I roll my shoulders, trying to erase the tension, trying to remember what it feels like to be touched by someone. But all we can do is look. Remember when we were young? Deb says. And we'd pretend to smooch. Johnny Depp, I say, turning my back on her and wrapping my arms tight around my torso, running my hands up and down my back and making smoochy moans. Brian Cox, says Deb, doing the same. Oh, Brian, she sighs over her shoulder. I love it when you talk particle physics to me. Show me your Higgs boson. I giggle. You're sick in the head. But I hug myself tighter, and for a long minute we sit there holding ourselves and imagining the day we can hug one another again. It's a poor substitute for the real thing, but for the first time in days, I don't feel so alone. I keep myself busy, trying to keep my head full of tasks so I don't have room to worry about what lies ahead. I honestly don't know if anyone will look for me if I leave. I don't know what the consequences will be if I'm caught. All I know is that I can't take any chances that could land me back inside the quarantine. If I don't make it to the station, I'm going to have to stay underground until I can make another plan. I borrow Dad's backpack, something that's not conspicuous, but will hold enough to keep me going for a few days. Water, food, a change of clothes, basic first aid, nothing more than I can carry. I can't use anything that can be traced, like bank cards, and thanks to the registry, that includes my phone. I have £9 in a money belt, plus £60 from my sock drawer that I've been saving towards a jacket. I send a telepathic request for forgiveness to Alice and shake out the contents of her piggy bank. She has almost 50 quid, and judging by the fact that it's all in coins and small notes, it looks like the little miser has been squirreling away her pocket money for months. I make a silent pledge to pay her back with interest and stuff the notes and a handful of coins into my jeans. I find my hiking boots still packed from my move to London. Even as the days have ticked by, I've clung to a childish hope that the quarantine will be lifted and we'll all go back to normal. My job, my flat, my future are all sitting there awaiting my arrival. I never dreamed that, instead of starting my new life this weekend, I'd be fighting to save my old one. My passport is with the others in Mum's dressing table drawer. I don't have plans to use it, but I don't want to rule out any possibilities. If I need to keep moving and leave the country, I will. On the top of the dressing table is a photo of the four of us. The absence of Mum and Alice yanks at my heart, but I can't imagine what it would be like if they hadn't left for Auntie Margie's when they did. It would kill me to see my little sister go through this, and I know with certainty that, if she was still here, there would be no way I could leave without her. If my plan works, I'll see her soon. If it doesn't, I don't know what will happen to me. I can't think about that now. In the back of the drawer is a flowered box that I've often caught Mum browsing through. When I lift the lid, I'm confronted by so many memories. All of Mum's favourite photos of Alice and me. Our entire lives have been documented and squeezed into 4x6 frames of nostalgia. Family get-togethers with the other Siddles, visits to Auntie Margie, school events, afternoons in the back garden, and walks in the hills. All the minutiae of life are gathered in these images. So many good memories contained in one small space, while the real-life people are scattered all over. Mum and Alice on the south coast, and Dad and me trapped here. Another 24 hours and I won't be here anymore either. Then it will just be Dad. The thought of leaving him alone here grips at my stomach and twists hard. But he'd never leave, and it's unfair of him to make me stay. I'm about to put the box back when something catches my eye. Tucked underneath the liner in the bottom is a blue airmail envelope. Nothing unusual, except for the array of brightly coloured stamps and the unfamiliar lettering of the postmark. I pull it out and see that the stamps are from Greece, and the envelope is addressed in bold curly handwriting to Mum's work. The postmark shows it was sent more than a decade ago, long before Alice came along. I peek inside, expecting to find a handwritten letter, as this is clearly a personal correspondence, but all I find is more photos. There's one of Mum sitting on a restaurant terrace in the port town near Auntie Margie's house. The next is of Mum at some sort of party, chatting to people I don't recognise, a glass of champagne in her hand and her curls blowing in the breeze. She looks like the Mum I know, but I recognise in her a glimmer of the youthful Mum I've seen in old photographs, a relaxed, daring Mum. If ever there was a poster child for the restorative properties of holidays, Mum is it. I flip to the next photo. Mum is sunbathing, but judging by her glow, it couldn't possibly have been during an English summer. She's leaning back on her hands, her chin held high, one leg tucked up and the other straight. It's pretty obvious that she's posing for and flirting with her photographer. This is a side of my parents I definitely haven't seen. Go Dad, I think, as I tried to place the setting where he took this picture. But then I know. I recognise the varnished deck, the sunny yellow cushions and the pristine white cockpit of Mark's boat. A boat I am sure my father has never set foot on. I stare at my mother's face, piecing together crumbs of information that have been gathering in my mind for years. But I can't reconcile this picture of a woman in love with the knowledge that this woman is my mother. Until I turn to the bottom picture in my hands, because there she is. Her head leaned against Mark's bare chest, his tanned arm around her shoulder. And they are beaming at the camera in a way I've never seen her smile with my dad. There are so many thoughts vying for my attention, I can't keep them in any order, and yet one thought keeps scrabbling its way to the top. My mother has abandoned me in a village of death so that she can sneak time with her... And suddenly, all the missing pieces, the hushed arguments between my parents that I assumed were normal spats, Mum's insistence on visiting her sister every year, the sudden important meeting requiring a trip to London without Alice, Mark's offer of help, drop into place in a puzzle I hadn't realised I was trying to solve. As I stuff the envelope back in the bottom of the box and stash my mother's secret back where it belongs, a sense of betrayal sinks deep inside me. I have known my mother for almost 18 years, but now I am no longer sure I know her at all. The person I was counting on to shelter me is no longer a person I can trust. And suddenly my solid plan for escape is riddled with tiny fissures. It's still mid-afternoon when I hear Dad come in. I curse under my breath. I can only hope that he'll be too preoccupied to wonder why I'm brewing strong coffee at this time of day. I can't exactly tell him I'm using it to dye my blonde hair with its conspicuous purple streak back to brown so I can escape incognito tonight. With Andy's village shop closed, this natural option, courtesy of the internet, is the best I can do. Dad drops his mask and gloves into a bucket he set up by the door, then shuffles into the living room and plunks down on the couch. He looks tired. "Are you all right?" I ask. He sighs. "I will be. I've been all afternoon trying to explain to the powers that be that Mrs. Glover has special dietary needs that are not going to be met with this dehydrated slop they keep feeding us. It's like talking to the wall sometimes." "Why is that your job?" I ask. Dad looks at me like I've asked the stupidest question ever. "Well, who else does she have?" Dad, taking it upon himself to answer every call for help in the village, is nothing new. But since the quarantine, he's run himself ragged. His support of the affected families has ranged from handing out reassurances and words of comfort to coordinating any number of special arrangements like these for Mrs. Glover. It's just Dad being Dad, but now that I've found the skeletons rattling around in the back of Mum's cupboard, I want to shake him by the shoulders and yell at him to pay more attention to his own family instead of fussing around everyone else's. But when I scan through my images of him, I see a slow progression, a gradual change from the Dad of the early years to the Dad of now, and I have to wonder, does he already know about the skeletons? Does throwing his energy into everyone else's lives keep him from having to face his own? For all the criticisms I could make of my dad, he doesn't deserve this. And suddenly I feel very protective of my fragile father. I make him a big mug of tea. Thankfully, tea bags are included in our government rations, and tell him to put his feet up. He starts to fuss about dinner, but I tell him I have it under control, even though I don't. I feel like making one of his favourites, one of Grandma Siddle's old recipes like cheese and egg or toad in the hole. But despite the recent lift of the food restrictions, fresh ingredients like milk, eggs, cheese and sausages aren't yet included in our supplies. What I really want to do is run down to the Jolly Friar for haddock and chips, or ring up the Indian Summer for a chicken tikka and some onion bhajis. But everything that is normal and good about my life has been taken away. I should tell Dad I'm leaving. I should give him the chance to get away too. But he wouldn't take it. I know he wouldn't break the rules, and I know he wouldn't allow me to break them either. I have to do this alone. As I pull open the fridge door to see if there's anything remotely edible in there, a wave crashes over me. And before I know why, I am staring into the empty depths of the refrigerator and bawling my eyes out. And once I start, I can't stop. I just stand there, sobbing, my shoulders heaving up and down like I'm trying to shrug off the weight of the world. And I feel as if I am. I'm crying for choices that have been stripped away from me. The fact that I can't make my dad a simple dish of milk, cheese and eggs. I cry for the fractures running through my family, the secrets stashed in cupboards, the denial that anything is wrong. I cry that my sister is so far away, that my mother is suddenly a stranger to me, and that I'm about to leave my poor dad alone. I cry that I'm going to break the law and break my dad's heart along with it. I cry that my best friend's body can't be trusted to save a life, that the future I had planned is gone, and the future I have is unknown at best and non-existent at worst. But most of all, I cry for my loss of freedom. That I no longer have options in any part of my life. That I am now just a piece in a game I cannot control. That I am, one way or another, a statistic. "What's the matter?" Dad's voice behind me is full of concern, but the way his question flips up at the end lets me know there's only one answer he could stand to hear. I wipe my snotty nose across my arm like a toddler and press the heels of my hands under my eyes so my runny mascara won't make me look like a panda. "Nothing," I say. "I'm fine." I turn around and flash my dad a smile, blinking away the last stray tears. "Come on," he says. "It'll be okay. I promise it'll be okay." "I know it will," I say. "I'm just being silly." All my life, my parents have promised me things will be okay, and they always have been. But in this moment, I realise something. All these years, they've just been lucky. And this is a promise my dad has no hope of keeping. For the first time in my life, my so-called rebellion could earn me a lot more than parental disapproval. And suddenly, I am truly afraid for my future.
Welcome back. Like Aidan, Deb was another character who had a much smaller role in earlier drafts of the book. But she turned out to be one of my favourite characters in the story. She's a bit of a Hermione Granger in that she passes on information to the reader by explaining it to Em, but she's also that pragmatic, no-nonsense friend we all need. I have a couple of friends who tell me things I don't always want to hear, and I'm almost always grateful that they keep me grounded. I'll tell you more about Deb in a later episode, once I can do it without spoilers. But first, let's talk more about the power of human touch. It's a topic that comes up again in later chapters, and now we're living in this strange time of social isolation. I'm feeling its importance more and more. As Em says, what kind of life is it that you can't even hug a friend? Touch is one of the many non-verbal ways we communicate our emotions. Positive touch makes us feel secure, and it's been shown to lower stress hormones in the body and help with anxiety, social ability, and better sleep, all of which can affect performance in all areas of our lives. It can also help build cooperation and compassion, even between strangers. Warm touch releases oxytocin, a hormone that enhances our sense of trust and attachment. Touch has also been shown to slow the heart rate and lower our levels of stress hormone cortisol. Touch connects us with one another, something we really need right now. I have a friend I've known my whole life. She lives on the opposite side of the world, but I get to see her most years. When we meet, I know she will pull me into the biggest hug and won't let go until one of us gets a leg ache and has to move. That hug is everything. It is love. It is making up for missed time together. It's an instant reconnection that pulls us back together. I am missing that hug, and I know I probably won't get to reconnect with her like that this year. I'm missing my family hugs too. When I go to England to visit my family, I'll get giant squeezes from my older brothers, and I love it. I talk to my mum 2 or 3 times a week on video calls so we can see one another, but I miss being able to sit next to her to talk, to put my arm around her and hug her, to rub her back, feel that mother-daughter connection that started before I was even born. I miss hugs from family and friends, and even the reassuring touch of a kind stranger. Given how powerful human touch can be, it's no wonder some of us are finding ourselves more irritable, sleeping poorly, and anxious. One man in England came up with a solution for this need to hug loved ones, in particular his grandmother. If you haven't seen his cuddle curtain video, I'll put a link to it in the notes below. Now, I'm not condoning this as a safe way to start hugging people, but it does bring home how important touch is to us and how much we're missing it. For now, I'm sending virtual hugs to you and hoping you can find yourself a real hug. Join me next week as Em puts her plan into action. For now, though, stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Smallest Thing. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. If you'd like to support the show, please leave a review and share this series with others you think might enjoy it. If you're on Instagram, tag me there at LisaManterfield_, or follow me on Facebook at author Lisa Manterfield and Twitter at Lisa Manterfield. My newsletter subscribers are always the first to know about my news, events, upcoming releases, giveaways, and more. Sign up for monthly delivery at lisamanterfield.com/subscribe and get your complimentary copy of Love, Loss and Letting Go, 3 of my short stories. Thanks to Justin Joseph for producing and editing this show, and to Ketsa.uk for the music. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening.